any more time from your schedule. Once again, it's a pleasure to have you all. And Larissa, the floor is yours. You can also reintroduce yourself if you want to.
Okay, thank you, Lana. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, you can see my screen? All right.
Yes, we can.
Is it on your end? Is it cut off with like everyone's videos?
No, not cut off.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So Lana already did introduction, but just again, briefly to explain what exactly I do, because maybe you don't know what's a functional nutrition counselor, what's a holistic health coach. Basically, I'm helping people to improve both their diet and their lifestyle, whether it's addressing sleep, stress, toxins, exercise, you know, all the things that contribute to health. But the functional nutrition part is really about root cause resolution. So briefly, what that means is instead of the traditional approach to healthcare where you have some pain or headache or high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and they give you a pill, instead of just taking a pill, we're asking, why do you have that condition? You know, why do you have high blood pressure? Why do you have high cholesterol? Why do you have headaches all the time? And then we address that underlying, we say, root cause. And so that's why I'm so passionate about gut health and the gut microbiome, because it literally is just so important, and not enough people know about the importance of the gut microbiome. But it literally is like there's a saying from Hippocrates that all health begins in the gut, as well as all disease begins in the gut. So I am just super excited to share this with any audience that I have the opportunity to speak to. And I hopefully will have time to get through my presentation, but I definitely want to save time for Q&A. So as Lano said, if you want along the way, pop it in the comments. I might not be looking at those, but at the end, you know, I'll go through and address anything there. And then at the end, you can also raise your hand to ask questions. All right. So yeah, what we'll cover is just, I'm going to give a brief introduction of what exactly is gut health and the microbiome and why is it important. And then we'll talk a little bit about the things that are going to be harmful and the things that are going to be helpful for your gut health. And if I have time, then I'll address some of the common mistakes I see people making. Actually, I'm going to skip there. So I might skip through some things just for time's sake. Actually, one second. I might have pulled up the wrong version of my PowerPoint. Just give me 1 minute. Yeah, sorry about that. I think I actually have the old version of my presentation, so just give me 1 second.
Please take your time.
So while I'm waiting for it to send, actually what I wanted to start with, I'll back up, but so I want to first just explain why everyone should care about the gut and the microbiome. So when I share my next presentation, you'll see a whole long list, but I'm going to run through it. So I want you to just think to yourself, how many of these symptoms that you have? I'm going to list all of these things that are connected. So just think to yourself if you have this or not. So I'll start with some of the ones that I think a lot of people have, which is trouble losing weight, maybe weight gain or difficulty losing weight, bad breath, any sort of digestive issues that could be bloating, excess gas, heartburn, indigestion, constipation, diarrhea, anything related to poor digestion. It could be anything related to immune health. You might frequently get sick, whether it's colds or being susceptible to, something like COVID. It could be an autoimmune disease, which autoimmune disease is like multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus. There's over 100 different autoimmune diseases. It could be diabetes, pre-diabetes. It could be a family history of cancer, heart disease. It could be kidney issues, liver disease. I'm trying to think what else. Headaches, asthma. I'm just trying to think, like, if you basically have anything in your body that's kind of not functioning well, maybe low energy, fatigue, also the mind, like if you have anxiety, depression, any sort of difficulty concentrating, brain fog, then this is definitely important for you to listen to. But also, even if you don't have any of those things, and right now you say, I feel great, maybe you know someone that can benefit from this information who you can share it with, or you just really want to prevent disease and you want to have the best health possible. So this is really important for absolutely everyone. And that's why I am so excited to share it with you. All right, let me switch my presentation. Okay. Okay, let's start now. So the gut microbiome, what to eat for a healthy gut and a healthy you. So because having a healthy gut means you're going to have a healthy you. You're going to be having the best health possible. Okay, so this was kind of the long list that I went through, that if you have any of these, and this is even the whole list, as I said. Oh, also skin issues. I know a lot of people complain about acne or eczema, and that can be linked to gut health. Sugar cravings, so if you have a lot of sugar cravings, also linked. So as you can see, so much comes back to the health of our gut. And so these are all associated with what we call gut dysbiosis, and that means an imbalance of the number and diversity of your gut bacteria and other microbes. Because we have both bacteria as well as like virus and fungi living in our gut. And we're gonna have both good and bad ones, we just need to have more of the good guys. So when I say gut health, the gut is kind of a term we use to refer to our gastrointestinal tract. And so another term for that is just the digestive system or the digestive tract. And it starts, from the mouth down the esophagus, stomach, small and large intestines. And gut health also includes the function and balance of our gut microbiome, which, as I said, it's a collection of bacteria, virus, fungi that live, actually they live everywhere. We have a whole microbiome on our skin. We have an oral microbiome in our mouth, which is why I said bad breath is a sign that you have gut dysbiosis, because you have too much bad bacteria in your mouth. And so I'm going to focus today's presentation talking about how to have a healthy gut microbiome, because that's really one of the keys to just a healthy digestive system. But of course, there are still many other things that can be done to optimize your digestion. So the gut microbiome, it is, they say it's about, we don't know, but they've estimated over 100 trillion bacteria and other microbes that live in our GI tract. And so essentially, we are only about 10% human and 90% bacteria. Because bacteria, what makes them so powerful, they found, is that they actually have their own DNA and, you know, genes. And so that's why they say that there's actually, so we have only 22,000 human genes, but there's 5 to 10 million genes estimated that make up the microbiome. And so when you think about that and the power of like the influence of genes, you can see why it's important to have healthy gut bacteria, because those genes are sending signals and communication throughout our body. And the thing about our microbiome is it's also very unique, like a fingerprint. No one has the exact same microbiome, and so many things from our birth. You know, we were passed down microbiome from our mother, and then throughout our life, many, many different things affect our microbiome. And so just a few more quick reasons why our gut microbiome matters is it's also called our second brain. So we know that there's this connection directly from the brain to the gut, and that it's a two-way communication, that communication goes both ways, and that we have more than 500 million nerves in our GI system. And so if you think about that, it's amazing. Actually, the majority of serotonin is produced in the gut. And about 50% of dopamine is produced in the gut. And that's why there's this connection to anxiety or depression. People who have tried antidepressant medication, they don't get better, but when they address the health of their gut, then the depression goes away. And also within our gut, we produce a lot of hormones. So women who have any sort of hormonal imbalance, not just related to like brain hormones, they need to address the gut. Also, as I said, almost every disease or symptom can be linked back to gut dysbiosis, because they say only about like 5% of disease is purely genetic. About 95% of disease is, genes are a part of it, but it's this thing called epigenetics, where our lifestyle, our diet, and as I'm talking about, our microbiome influences whether or not those genes get switched on. So you might have a gene for cancer, but it doesn't mean you're going to get cancer, as long as you have a healthy diet, healthy lifestyle, which influences having a healthy gut microbiome. And so it's really important that we don't have gut dysbiosis. Also, why it's so important is 80% of your immune system resides in the lining of your gut. So if you want to have a healthy immune system, like I say with, for example, COVID, the answer is not just to get a vaccine. The answer is to optimize your gut health, which means you optimize your immune function, because when we have a lot of these good bacteria and other organisms, then naturally, like, they're able to, you know, support the balance within our body. Our immune system is able to fight off, you know, a lot of these foreign invaders that we don't want. And also, you know, for anyone's interested in anti-aging, you know, we always want to stay young as long as possible. And of course, weight loss is a big interest. And there's a lot of research on the link between weight loss and gut microbiome. So, oh, and then energy production. So there's just so many things. Again, I want to emphasize it because I want everyone to come away from this presentation really eager to support the health of their gut. And I'm going to give you really simple ways to do that. So in terms of like what a healthy gut microbiome is, as I said, it is about the number and the diversity of bacteria. So I keep saying bacteria, even though it is also viruses and fungi, and it's just that bacteria make up the majority of the microbiome. So diversity is key. And diet is the number one thing that we can do to nourish a healthy gut microbiome. Other things are important, like sleep, stress, environment, but diet is number one. I'm going to go through this kind of quickly, and yeah, I'll just touch on a few points here. So things that disrupt the microbiome. Anyone who's using a lot of NSAIDs, so any sort of anti-inflammatory things like aspirin, ibuprofen, medications. So, you know, medications, they don't come without side effects, and there's a lot that can also disrupt the microbiome. The big one being antibiotics. And it's just, antibiotics are so overused and even overprescribed by doctors. And so you have to be really cautious that you only take antibiotics when absolutely needed. Other things, acid blockers. So like people who have heartburn, that's something that you definitely don't want to just be taking acid blockers. It makes the problem worse. Antidepressants, like all of these, you have to think about the side effects. And that's why I talk about getting to the root cause and minimizing the use of different medications. I mean, just chronic inflammation, which comes from stress, any sort of toxins, poor diet, poor quality sleep, eating foods that you might have a sensitivity to. I'll talk about that later. And the next points I'll talk about later also. The last one, large amounts of animal products. So I'm not against animal products. It's just you don't want to have too much. You don't want to have, and I'm not against saturated fat, but you also don't want to have too much. And that's why I really don't encourage people to do the keto diet, because I see a lot of people doing it in the wrong way. It can be a healthy diet, but a lot of people are doing it in an unhealthy way, and it's really harming the gut microbiome. So there's a lot of things to optimize your gut microbiome, but these are just kind of the 4 main ones. Number 1, and I know this is big for people living in Kurdistan in Iraq, is to decrease sugar and refined carbohydrates. So I'm talking about white sugar. Dates are obviously much healthier. Honey in moderation, much healthier. But white sugar, there's studies showing that the more that you have, refined sugar, the more gut dysbiosis you'll have. And it also leads to nutrient depletion and just a whole lot of other problems. And then refined carbs. Of course, I have nothing against eating white rice. I eat white rice sometimes, but it's just about the quantity. We don't want to just have huge, big plates of white rice with a side of white bread and then a very, very tiny bowl of salad. It's about proportions and balance. So then number 2, I really feel is the most important, which is increasing fiber in your diet through a whole food plant-based diet. And when I say plant-based, it doesn't mean 100% vegetarian, vegan, but you should aim for closer to 90% plant-based, where again, you can have some animal products, some meat, but try to have more plants on your plate. And the most important thing, which I will repeat again later on, the most important thing for a healthy gut microbiome is diversity of plants in your diet. So broccoli is super healthy, but if you just eat broccoli every day, that's actually not very good. I mean, you could eat broccoli every day as long as at the same time you're eating a lot of different vegetables, different fruits. And don't be afraid of fruit. Some people start to read and think, oh my gosh, fruit's unhealthy, it's full of sugar. No, fruit is very healthy. I mean, don't eat it like super late at night and then go straight to sleep. But fruits and vegetables, like the more that you add them to your diet, you're getting a lot of fiber, and it's one of the best things that you can do for your gut microbiome and overall health. And then 3 and 4 are really getting serious about stress relief. We know stress is bad, but just we need to address it. We need to do things to help reduce our stress, whether it's simply just taking time to do some deep breathing, going for a relaxing walk, meditation, and sleep is also very important. And so, sleep is about not just how many hours you sleep, but it's about the quality. And also, if you're waking up a lot, like some people who wake up a few times during the night, this is also correlated with having more gut dysbiosis. But today we are just focusing on diet. So I'm going to give you my 3 Ps for feeding your microbiome: probiotics, prebiotics, polyphenols. I'll explain what these are. So probiotics, I don't know if anyone's familiar, but probiotics are microbes with, so basically bacteria that has beneficial qualities for you. And you can get now probiotic supplements that you can take in pill form, and those can be good if you get a good quality, but there's a lot of companies that are selling probiotics, and I think it's just a big waste of money because the quality isn't good. So you can also get probiotics from food, raw fermented foods. Like the first 2 you might not know about, sauerkraut and kimchi. Kimchi is actually from Korea, and they eat it all the time. Then pickles, so similar to tertiat, but tertiat is made with vinegar. So when I say lacto-fermented pickles, it's fermented just with salt, not with vinegar, in order to grow these beneficial bacteria. Yogurt, obviously everyone knows yogurt. Kefir is something similar to, in Kurdistan, you would call it like dough. And so that's even higher in probiotics than yogurt. And then just raw apple cider vinegar. But then the last thing is, besides food, we can actually get probiotics just from getting out in nature. Because where do probiotics come from? These healthy bacteria come from the soil where plants are grown. So as long as, let's say, you can, go to the village and there's some vegetable that you pull out of the earth, or you go to the mountains, I know springtime, there's a lot of different healthy vegetables that come from the mountain. If you pull it out of the earth and there's some dirt on it, as long as it's an area where they weren't spraying pesticides or, chemicals, then it's good actually not to really wash it. You just brush off the dirt and eat it, because you're actually getting good probiotics from the soil. If it's healthy soil that, is like not contaminated with chemicals. And just being in nature and basically like breathing in fresh air outside of the city, outside, away from cars and pollution, that, hugging a tree, whatever, like touching the earth. You don't have to like eat dirt, but even if you just get your hands in the dirt, people who are farming animals, like being around animals, they say really helps your microbiome, because they have all different bacteria, because we actually share the microbiome with people in our environment. And like people who have pets in the house, or perhaps like people who live on a farm, they have more diverse microbiome because of the animals or being in nature. So I think especially because with COVID, a lot of people, ended up staying inside more, using so much like hand sanitizer, just killing bacteria. But actually they say about 1%, or they say it could be as low as 0.1 or even 0.01 bacteria are actually bad, or not just bacteria, organisms, bacteria, virus are bad. 99.9% of bacteria and other organisms, microbes, are actually either good for us or just what we call commensal. Commensal means they're neither good or bad. So we don't want to be afraid of germs and bacteria. We want to take caution. Obviously now still wash your hands well before eating and that sort of thing, but we don't want to kill all the bacteria. Okay, prebiotics. So this is the most important. Fiber. Fiber is the food for your healthy gut microbes. And that's why I talk about eating plenty of plant foods, because we get zero fiber from animal foods, whether it's meat, dairy, eggs, there is zero fiber. And that's why we need more plants, but more diversity of plants, whether it's fruits, vegetables, as well as obviously beans, whole grains. And we also get fiber, these prebiotics from spices. So the other thing I say is, besides a variety of plant foods, using a variety of spices when cooking also is going to increase that diversity and is really, really beneficial. So when we feed our good bacteria this fiber, then they produce something that is one of the most healing nutrients. And there's a lot of research now going on about the benefits of what are called short chain fatty acids. So these are what give all the benefits. These are what are helping support our immune system, helping prevent cancer, and regulating blood sugar, and giving so many benefits throughout the body. So that's why we want to feed these probiotics and produce more short chain fatty acids. So I'm not going to go into details about this, but just to give like a simple explanation of why and how fiber is so beneficial. And then I just wanted to share here that actually the number, like I think is number one, or it's number two, food that has like the highest amount of prebiotic fiber, because all vegetables have some prebiotic fiber, but some have more than others. You don't really need to worry about which have most, just eat a diversity. But in English, we call this Jerusalem artichokes. I know there you call it seubinars. And so this is something that's very, very high in special type of fiber. And I know a lot of people use it in tertiat. So that's a really excellent source of prebiotic fiber. And then garlic, onions, leeks, these are also a really, really good source of prebiotic fiber. So that's also a good thing in the Kurdish diet. I know people love to eat onion. And the purple onion is especially good because my third P is polyphenols. Polyphenols are antioxidant compounds which have a positive effect on gut microbes. But we also know antioxidants are good for so many reasons. You know, we think about anti-aging. And so that's just like any dark colored, especially like purple, red colored fruits and vegetables. Most people think about berries, pomegranates, purple grapes, beets. But also, like I said, purple onions, and then things like dark chocolate, green, as well as black tea, and apples are all really good sources of polyphenols. And of course, these are also sources of prebiotic fiber. So again, just a reminder, the golden rule. So I want, if you take nothing else from this presentation, I want you to remember the golden rule for gut health. If you want a healthy gut microbiome, then it's increasing the diversity of plants in your diet. There was a study, it was a huge, called the American Gut Project, and it found that having at least 30 different plant foods in your diet per week gave the most benefits in terms of having a healthy gut microbiome. Actually, 30 isn't very, for me, I mean, I get at least 50 each week, but so my challenge to you is just to count. Might be a little harder if you're fasting now with Ramadan, but it's actually not that difficult because you can still count spices if you're using a generous amount of spices. And just pay attention to having different variety of fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, beans, and spices in your diet. Because the reason for this is that each plant food has different type of fiber that is specific for feeding different bacteria. And that's why in order to have diversity of bacteria, we need a diversity of fibers. All right, so I'm going to run through just a few common mistakes that I see people make when it comes to what I've shared. The first is increasing your fiber intake too quickly. So I don't want people to get super excited and then go and try to suddenly eat tons of vegetables when they're not used to it. I remember when I first was in Kurdistan, and so my husband is Kurdish, and so we were visiting his parents, and his mom had made this big dish of tertiat, and it was the first time I ever had the Jerusalem artichoke, the seubinars, and I really liked it. And I remember I was eating lots of it and the other things in the tertiat, and I was like burping so much. I just kept burping and burping and burping like all weekend, and I was just like, this is very strange. I never ever had issues with like burping and indigestion. So I finally learned later, much later, when I was studying about prebiotics, that the Jerusalem artichoke has like the most prebiotic and a type called inulin, which can be harder to digest. But then, for a while, I just like stayed away from tertiat because I'm like, okay, maybe this is not good for me. Finally, my mother-in-law, she always insisted to have it. So I said, okay, I'll try again. Then I didn't have any problem. And then from then on, I would get and eat lots of Jerusalem artichoke, and I didn't have any problems digesting it. I didn't have any burping or gas. The reason is because initially I didn't have the bacteria for digesting that because I'd never had it in my diet. It was new. So that's why if it's something that you haven't had, you need to slowly increase it. It would have been better if I had just like a small amount. But since I did eat a lot of it, I did feed those bacteria in my gut. And when the bacteria eat the fiber, they do produce gas. It's normal. And I kind of built up the ability. So slowly increase your fiber intake. Slowly start to eat more vegetables. Don't just quickly increase it, or you'll have tons of gas and then you'll think you're doing something wrong. The other thing is, related to number one, is avoiding foods that make you gassy. So rather than addressing the root cause. So I know a lot of people, we talk about beans like chickpeas, you say nok, and fasolia, make you gassy. But it's not really the food that is gassy, it's the person is gassy. And it's a lot of factors. One is simply like, how are the beans cooked? Are they soaked really well and cooked really well? And are you chewing your food? That is like the biggest thing when I talk about digestion. If anyone listening has issues with digestion, chew your food really well. It's the most important thing you can do, and it will help so much. Chew really well, eat more slowly. And if you're still having a lot of digestive issues with different foods, then you really need to think about what's the root cause and address that. So yeah, I'll have some time for Q&A at the end, but also I'll also share my contact information at the end so anyone can reach out to me. And then another big mistake, and it's not just people in Kurdistan, Iraq, but all over the world now. I think so many people struggle with constipation, and it's just not being addressed. It's kind of become normal. So we should be pooping at least 1 to 3 times a day, and it should be easy. We shouldn't have to strain. So if you have constipation, this is super, super important, because if you're not going, then it's just you're holding toxins in your body. That's not good for your gut microbiome. Holding toxins in your body, recirculating them, is not good for overall health. And also, if people are interested, if you send me a message afterwards, I have a free guide all about constipation, and I can share that with anyone who's interested. And number 4, 2 more, is being fearful of carbs. So I know a lot of people trying to lose weight think, oh my gosh, carbs are bad. Well, fruits and vegetables are carbs. Beans are carbs, and these are healthy. And so if you're doing the keto diet and you're just focused on so much fat and animal protein, and you're eating very little diversity of plants, that's going to be really bad for your gut microbiome. It might help you lose weight in the short term, but in the long term, it's going to have detrimental effects for your health. Again, there can be therapeutic and healthy way to do keto, but I just know a lot of people follow it in an unhealthy way, because because it also depends on the quality of your animals, you know, because chicken, for example, a lot of chickens can be raised with antibiotics. So it's not just getting antibiotics, you know, from our doctor, but if, you know, we're eating chickens that were raised with antibiotics, then that can also affect our gut microbiome. And then there's another thing called low FODMAP, which I won't go into, but the point is you don't want to follow any restrictive diet for too long. It's not healthy. And then the last thing is common mistake, thinking there's a quick fix to your chronic problems and just relying on medication. So like I said, sometimes medication can be helpful, but we should not rely on it. And we shouldn't just look for like a quick fix to make our symptom go away. If we have a symptom, like if we have a headache, if we have a pain in our body, it's a sign. Our body is trying to tell us something. It's trying to tell us that there's something wrong going on, and we need to figure out what is going wrong and address that, rather than just taking a pill so we don't feel the pain anymore. You know, it's like you're in your car and the check engine light comes on and you just snip the wire so the light turns off and you think everything's fine, but still there's a problem with your engine that hasn't been addressed. And that's why, again, I give the simple example with taking acid blocking medication, because so many people have heartburn, acid reflux, and they're just taking these acid blocking medications, which are making it worse. It's another topic, but most people that have heartburn, they actually have not enough stomach acid, too little stomach acid, so they're not digesting their food well. And if you take acid blocking medication, you're making the problem worse, and it's also affecting your gut. So that was a lot. I'm going to stop now and take any questions. But just remember, having a healthy gut is the secret, I believe, the secret to great overall health. And lastly, knowledge is power, but knowledge without action is useless. So one, I want you to remember to take what you learned and share it with others. But also at least take away from this the point of diversity of plants in your diet is so important, and try to get at least 30 different plant foods and spices in your diet each week, and watch how much white sugar you're consuming. All right, I'm gonna unshare my screen and see if anyone has questions.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. I'm sure there are a lot of information in your presentation that the audience benefited from. So we will open the floor for Q&A now. You can use the chat box, or you can raise your hand so we can call your name out and unmute yourself. So yeah, feel free to ask any questions that you have.
Okay, I see one question in the chat.
Yeah.
Rami says, how do we commit to a healthy lifestyle, especially when we live a very unhealthy lifestyle, including dolma? So actually, the thing is, dolma is very healthy in a way, depending how it's made, because again, there's a lot of different vegetables that can be used when making dolma. Like when occasionally I make dolma with my husband, like it's healthy because we're not using a ton of oil or a ton of salt. So I think that Kurdish cooking can be very healthy. You know, the way that if I'm like cooking like with my husband Kurdish food, he now like, we just use olive oil in our cooking. We use pink Himalayan sea salt, and we use a lot less oil, a lot less salt, but everything tastes really delicious. Like, and he, I mean, even says like some of it's like better than his mom's, and hers is delicious too. But so the thing is, I mean, I don't know, obviously it's hard, you know, whoever's the person cooking, you know, if it's your mom or your wife. But Kurdish food can be healthy, you know, because there's obviously like sauza, for example. Like I say, no matter what you have, like if I go to visit, like at the end of Ramadan, I'll be going to visit, because right now I'm actually living in Turkey, but I'll be going back to Iraq to visit. And what I do is whenever I visit my husband's family, I make sure that there's like always lots of salsa, lots of leafy greens, or I make sure there's a salad. So sure, I'm still gonna have whatever she cooks, like rice, or if it's dolma, but at least add. So it's always about, I think when I work with clients with health coaching, I focus on adding in more good stuff rather than focusing on like taking away the bad stuff, because psychologically it's easier. You know, no one likes to think about, oh, I have to quit soda, I have to quit sugar. But if you just think, no, I just need to add more water, I need to drink more water, I need to eat more vegetables. When you add more, it will naturally crowd out the unhealthy. So I think that's where it starts with a lifestyle change, is choose a few things that are simple that you can add to your current lifestyle. Like just drinking water is so important and beneficial. Drinking more water and just making sure that like every meal, even if you don't make a salad, it's very easy to just have salsa, or even like purple cabbage is also, like when I talked about polyphenols, purple cabbage is so cheap and it's so easy to just chop up and make into a salad or something. So there's a lot of ways, but just think about what's, you know, something simple that you can do just to start adding more plant foods. Okay. Does having a healthy gut microbiome help with increasing metabolism rate? So if the question is like for weight loss, I don't know if it increases your metabolism, but the way that it helps you to lose weight is actually because it helps with your hunger, like your hormones. So we have leptin and ghrelin, which are the two hormones that control hunger and satiety. And when we have a healthy gut microbiome, then we're going to produce, like sooner we'll produce leptin, which will tell us that we're full. And so that's why when you have a healthy microbiome, it's easier to lose weight, because your hormones are in balance and you're getting the signal saying, oh, you're full, stop eating. And it's easier to avoid overeating. And I think that's where like a lot of the benefit comes. And then there's some others. So it might also help increase metabolism. I'm not sure, but it definitely, like they had a study where they took two rats, they were twin rats, and they changed the microbiome in one of the rats. So they took a microbiome from a fat, like obese mouse or rat, and put it into a regular one. And just, he didn't change his diet or anything, but just by giving him this new microbiome that was from an obese mouse, he suddenly gained weight. So it's, they're now doing even like fecal transplants, fecal being like poop, stool, that they're actually now using it in treating certain conditions by, yeah, it's kind of the future of healthcare, I think, is fecal transplants. All right. Here in Kurdistan, some doctors guide us to stop eating certain types of food. For example, I once asked to stop eating tomatoes because they're bad for my kidneys. Do you think that we should stop eating certain food completely in such cases, or we should just decrease the amount we take since there are certain nutrients in each food we eat? Great question, Juan. So it depends. Something I didn't have time to talk about is something called food sensitivity. So a food allergy, of course, you know if you're allergic to a food because you'll have like, you know, a really bad reaction and you'll end up in the hospital. But a food sensitivity is, it's not an extreme reaction like an allergy, but it's still when you eat a food, it creates an immune response in your body and you don't feel well. But in terms of just something like this, like tomatoes being bad for the kidneys, like I don't know the reason for that advice, but I might say, for example, if someone has acid reflux, we know that in the short term, to feel better, they should reduce acidic foods in their diet, like tomatoes and citrus, chocolate, coffee, black tea. But in the long term, they shouldn't always avoid those foods because we need to address the root cause. So it's the same, like if someone has issues with their kidneys, the solution isn't to stop eating tomatoes or any sort of foods. The solution is to see, like, why do you have a problem with your kidneys, and address that. So, and unfortunately, and it's not just Kurdistan, it is in the world, definitely in the US, that doctors just don't receive training in nutrition. And so their way of practicing healthcare isn't to use diet and lifestyle modification. And because they're not educated well enough, they can't give proper guidance. And yeah, so definitely, I don't think it's necessary or good ever to like restrict a lot of these healthy foods long term. But in the short term, you know, you just have to figure out if they're making you feel bad, like you eat a food and you notice that you don't feel well afterwards, you might have a food sensitivity. But otherwise, no, I don't think that it's useful to restrict. And again, if I, you know, don't fully answer a question, I will share my contact at the end for my Instagram. So you can always send me a message on Instagram to follow up with me. Okay, Soline says, how can people with lactose intolerance have less stomach problems? Yeah, so lactose intolerant, I mean, unfortunately, the only thing is to avoid dairy products that are high in lactose. And so that's why some people, they can tolerate yogurt, but not milk, because milk will be much higher in lactose, where yogurt, because of the fermentation process, will be much lower in lactose, or certain types of cheese will be lower in lactose. And so you have to experiment and see. For some people with lactose intolerance, maybe they just completely avoid dairy. For others, they can find that, okay, certain type of cheese or, you know, yogurt that's well fermented yogurt with much less lactose is fine. But otherwise, I would say just cut out dairy. I mean, we don't need dairy. It's not actually a health food. Yogurt's the best type, but if all dairy is giving you stomach problems, you just have to avoid it. Ali says, many people complain about colon disease, and the fiber intake causes an issue for them, even a little. Okay, good question, Ali. So yeah, there's different, I don't know which type of colon disease, there's different issues of the colon, and so it's right. Initially, they're going to eat certain high fiber foods and not feel well. And that's why, as I said, they need to address the underlying root cause. And that's really the people that I work with, because I need to collect information about their, you know, their diet, their symptoms, their health history, to understand all of that and then know what might be the root cause and then work with them to address that, because they shouldn't long-term have to avoid those foods. But in the short term, we might need to do some work to help heal their gut so they're able to properly digest those foods. Karwan says, could you please give us a natural way or a quick treatment that can help to reduce constipation? Sure. So I'll share maybe like 3 tips for constipation. And then if people want more, again, if you send me, let me just put in the chat before I forget. If you send me a message on Instagram, I will share a free constipation guide. There's my Instagram. Oop, that was just Talano. Everyone at Pop Wellness.
I'll also be sharing your contact information with everyone afterwards. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, constipation. So number 1, and some of these are obvious, but I don't think people are doing them, is drinking enough water. People think they drink enough water, but they don't. And then especially anyone who's fasting for Ramadan has to be even more cautious to make sure they're drinking enough, because I think when people break their fast, they might have like a tiny cup of water and then they just start eating. And I think they suddenly forget about drinking enough water throughout the evening. But just in general, drinking enough water and enough, it's not just actually with hydration, it's not just water. They say actually you can get more hydration from fresh fruits and vegetables like cucumbers and apples, you know, are really, really hydrating. So having not just more water, but more of these fresh fruits and really fiber or water rich vegetables like cucumbers, really good. Watermelon, of course. And then number 2 for constipation. So I always tell people to get flax seeds. So in Kurdish, you say katan. I don't know if people know this, but I know they sell it at least at Carrefour. And I believe there's maybe some other places that, and it's really quite cheap. Is these little seeds. They're like the size of a sesame seed, kunji, and they're dark brown. So you get them and you use like a blender or like a spice grinder, coffee grinder, and you make it into a powder. And you take a spoonful of that and you mix it in water and drink that at night, 1 to 2 spoons, and drink that at night. And it's a really good type of fiber that can help. And I always do that whenever I'm visiting my mother-in-law's house. There is make sure that I bring my flaxseed with me. Also chia seed. Chia seed is also really good. Soak it in water, and that's helpful. And on my Instagram, I have a video somewhere that shows how I make this. I call it my flax cocktail. Number 3 for constipation is, movement. People just need to move more. Like, it doesn't mean it has to be intense exercise, but just walking more, super important. But as I said, if people want more, then send me a message on Instagram and I'll share my complete constipation guide. Dahlia says, what are the causes of excess gas and what is the best treatment for it? So this is a difficult question because it depends what's causing the gas. Like, for example, the very first thing, like if I'm working with a client, I always start by addressing how we eat, because as I said, like just chewing your food really well, you know, that's where the digestion begins, is in our mouth. Like the saliva has the enzymes to start breaking down food, and it needs to mix with the food. And obviously, the more that you break down food in your mouth, the easier it will be in the rest of the digestive tract, and the less gas. But some people, like if you're having really excessive gas and bloating, like for some, and unfortunately, like a lot of women suffer more than men, but honestly, bloating where your stomach is like distended, it's almost like some people look like they're pregnant from so much bloating, then that can be something that's called bacterial overgrowth, like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, because what happens is you have these good bacteria in the wrong place. The majority of our bacteria should be in the colon, the large intestine. But sometimes things happen, they end up in the small intestine, and then they're feeding on the fiber and they're producing all this excess gas. And so if anyone's been diagnosed with what's called IBS, IBS is irritable bowel syndrome. A lot of that is this bacterial overgrowth. So anyways, Dahlia, you can send me a message if you want to ask me more about that. And what do you think of soul water? Interesting question. I was just reading up about this. So soul water, Himalayan salt in water. So I actually just listened to a really fascinating interview with a woman. She started this hydration foundation or something in the US, and they're doing a lot of interesting research about water and saying that plain water isn't as hydrating because it's not, it doesn't have electrical charge, essentially. That's why we can, if we get water that's in plants, like the water that's bound in an apple or in a cucumber, it has like this electrical charge and it's more hydrating in our body. Or if we like add chia seeds to water, if anyone knows chia seeds, and they gel up. Also, adding Himalayan pink salt in water, just a very small pinch, they say that it also helps to activate like the electrical charge of the water, and can be more hydrating. So yeah, recently I've been reading out more about hydration, and so I do think that can be good. Like for example, like some people in the morning, what they'll do is just squeeze half a lemon and put a small pinch of pink Himalayan sea salt in a glass of water and drink that first thing, and that will be a really good way to start your day. Okay, any other questions? Also feel free to raise your hand if you want to ask, but otherwise I think we're perfect on time.
We're about time. We're about to end the session, and so that brings us to the end of the session. It was a lovely session. Thank you very much for your contribution and for your time. I'm sure that everyone on the Zoom call loved it. Just one last thing that we usually do, if anyone is